Joined now by Geoff Schwartz, former Pac-12 football player, longtime NFL veteran. Geoff, what do you think about the Pac-12 decision as a former Oregon football player? Well, obviously he ties in with the Big Ten decision as well.
I also host a show on Sirius Radio every day called Pac-12 Today. It's going to be hard to host
I didn't know
show
that.
about the Pac-12.
How long is the show?
Well, right now we're on like a summer thing where we just do a podcast and put out, but normally it's 6 to 9 Eastern every Monday through Friday.
Oh, I didn't even know that. So you'd have 3 hours a day to talk about Pac-12 issues with nothing going on in the Pac-12. That show can't go on, can it?
Well, so for the last 2 months, we've done basically like last night I recorded a 2-hour podcast that we played today, essentially.
Yeah.
That's what we've been doing now. And so I don't know. I think we're contractually obligated to have a show on once a day for 2 years.
Yeah.
Look, luckily for me, I do cover the NFL, right? So I can, and obviously I watch basketball, I watch baseball, I follow sports. So, I mean, we can do like a hybrid show, basically do NFL essentially on Pac-12 radio. But yeah, I mean, there's a Big Ten station too on Sirius. I know guys that work for the Big Ten station. I mean, look, if you had told me that I lost a job because I was fired, sure. That's like a reasonable thing that could happen. But to say like I can't work because there's just no football, something I never expected to happen. I mean, last night was the weirdest show I've ever recorded, right? I mean, to basically talk about a conference shutting down. I mean, I have to record tonight. What am I going to talk about tonight? So it's crazy. I'm just sad because I felt like they could have waited. The Pac-12 had kind of done everything right up until this point. They scheduled September 26th, the first weekend, same as the SEC did, just because they knew they needed time. They've done a good job as far as the players on campus that have already on campus have done a great job. They've stayed healthy for the most part. They've been training. They've done their job. California last week just kind of gave a guideline for how the 4 schools in California can get back to playing as soon as possible. But a couple of things that kind of hurt in that is that the Pac-12 agreed, they vowed to play 12 teams or no teams. And right now, California, they be behind. Right, camp was supposed to start Monday. They couldn't have camp, right? And so USC, UCLA, Stanford, Cal would have to kind of be behind. I think the Pac-12 was worried about that. I just didn't feel like you had to do this now. The outcome might still be the same in 2 or 3 weeks, but I felt like delay, which is what the Big 12 did, was the kind of the smart way to go right now. And I'm just sad, man. Like, I love my Oregon Ducks. I love the conference, and I wish that we had delayed, but that's didn't happen, and it's going to set our conference back, especially if the other 3 major conferences play and we don't.
Yeah, so let's talk about that in a context here under which this is at play. What happens now from a procedural standpoint? Because I don't believe that spring football is going to happen. So some people are immediately going to say, okay, they're going to play in fall. So let's go to this spring football idea in the Big Ten and the Pac-12. I believe it's just, first of all, you're talking about starting the season in the middle of cold and flu season, which in theory would be when the coronavirus is most viable, right? You're also talking about the potential of doing the season before there's a vaccine, because there's no way that football players are going to be at the front of the line to get a vaccine, because by and large, young, healthy people are the last people that need the vaccine. If you look at death rates, they should be the last to get it, because older people by far should be first, right? So all that. Yeah. Plus, your body as a young person at 18 or 19 years old playing 20 or 24 games or whatever the heck it would need to be in the space of like 7 or 8 months is flat out almost unbelievable. So do you agree with all those things? How would you assess the idea of spring football?
Yeah, it's not happening. I mean, it sounds good. It gives you hope. Look, the Pac-12 announced their cancellation with no assumption of spring football. They said that we had no athletics, and that includes men's and women's basketball, by the way, till January 1st. The Big Ten is the one who floated the idea of
spring
football.
Yeah.
I got to say, the Pac-12 at least stuck together in this. The Big Ten obviously did not, and they've been all over the place. Spring football is not going to happen for the reason you mentioned, right? Is that playing two seasons in one calendar year is just not healthy.
As
for
someone
the
who
body.
played college football, explain to people out there who may not understand how physically debilitating to your body would it be as an 18-year-old to try to play, let's say, 20 or 24 football games in the space of like 6 or 7 months?
Well, you're just not used to it, right? I mean, you're used to playing 12 to 15 games possibly. The NFL, obviously, you can play, if you include the old schedule, you play 4 preseason games, and, if you make the Super Bowl, you play 23 games, let's say. You build yourself into that, right? Like you have a first year in the NFL, second year in the NFL. You build into that. You don't build into that in college. The players would have no idea how to handle that stress on their bodies, and it might not affect them that year per se, but it will affect them in years moving forward. There's also the fact of an injury that occurs at the beginning or any point of this spring football schedule could keep you out of the fall schedule as well. So you have one injury costing you 2 seasons, which really doesn't happen now unless you have a dislocated knee and you have to miss obviously 2 or 3 years to do that. There's also the consideration, in my opinion, of the weather. Okay, most places have terrible weather in February and March. Do we really want to play college football when the weather is that bad every week? No, we don't. Like, seriously. I mean, that again is not great for the players and the playing conditions, and then also the NFL draft, right? I mean, the NFL is under no obligation to move their draft.
Right.
And I don't think they will.
And training for the combine, which is where you and I met, which is the bigger part than the draft itself, is getting ready to go post your measurables in February. Even if the NFL moved their draft back, it's hard to believe that they would need to have the combine still in March or something, right? Which would be right in the middle of the season as well.
Correct. And so they're going to have to do a lot of different things to make that work if you're the NFL. And the NFL, again, is under no obligation to make those work, especially if the 3 other conferences play their season, which I think that they're definitely going to try to play their season. I mean, there's no doubt they're going to try to do it. Whether or not they end up doing it, we'll see, but they're at least going for it. And the NFL, if the NFL plays on time, which, again, I think they're doing a great job. If you watched Hard Knocks last night, you saw all the different procedures and protocols they put in place. They're going to play. And so their calendar is going to be the same next year. Why are they going to move their calendar around? Because two major Power 5 conferences didn't play their season. So, I do wonder if players try to transfer like now, like whether or not Panay Sewell, the left tackle for Oregon, can get a waiver and go to an SEC school and be the left tackle, which I'm sure that every SEC school outside of maybe Alabama would want him to come in and play right now. I mean, you're a Vols fan. If you put Trey Smith and Panay Sewell on one side, you'll have the best side of college football. I wonder if that might happen, if they will allow people just to transfer, within the next month.
Well, and that ties into my other big question for you is, pretend that you had been a senior at Oregon and your senior year gets canceled. How is the NCAA going to handle scholarship limits when all of these rising seniors in high school now have either accepted or will be accepting scholarships going forward? You have an 85 scholarship limit. For the guys out there that are the Trevor Lawrences or the Justin Fields of the world who are good enough to go to the NFL, I think they'll just go ahead and matriculate to the NFL. But what about like you? Like when you were a senior, you were trying to prove that you could be an NFL player. You wouldn't want to just go off into have to give up your career, I wouldn't imagine. I'd imagine you'd want to come back and try to play another year. But all those freshmen coming up, you have 85 scholarships. Are the Pac-12 and the Big Ten going to have to go to 110 scholarships? I mean, how's that going to work?
I think they're going to take the model of the spring sports. And so for the spring sports, and this is around all, NCAA essentially, is like, if you want to keep that player on for another year, you're welcome to do so. But there's no obligation. So, for example, I'll tell you, like Oregon kept their 2 or 3 best softball players and let all the other ones leave.
Yeah.
So I could see that being the scenario for college football. If you are a contributor, if you are a special teams player, if you're a leader, and you want to come back for one more year, they keep you on. So one team might have 92 scholarships, one might have 95. Obviously, the finances of that have to work out for your university, and that's how you kind of build your roster for one season. As you keep extra scholarships available for the players that you want to come back. I think that's the best way to go, because you're right. You would have to have basically for a 5-year period 110 scholarships on your team, because you can't just grant you have to go basically everyone the extra season.
Right. And everybody, I would think, like, let's say you're a sophomore or a junior, I'd think most guys would want that option to count this year as a redshirt year, meaning they would get 5 years to play 4. So those guys, it's not like it just goes away after 1 year, the fact that you have too many scholarships. This is something that's a rolling problem for years to come.
Well, it's really for some guys 6 years to play 4.
Yeah.
Because some have already redshirted already.
Yeah, right.
And they're on the track, so it's really 6 years to play 4. And that's what I think a lot of guys would choose. I mean, why not, right? You're still in college, you're still on scholarship, you have a chance to get your master's degree now maybe for free. So a lot of guys would choose if the schools let them. And again, it's a money issue in my opinion, because some schools don't have the money to. And this is a big issue that we're going to see, is that there's just not enough money to do the proper protocols. If you watch, again, I'll refer back to Hard Knocks. If you watch Hard Knocks last night, you saw all the money the Rams and Chargers, every team has done this, has put into making their place, they're up to guidelines for the distancing that has to be done. And the NFL's done a really good job so far of keeping players healthy. Colleges just can't afford that. Oregon State cannot afford to build an entire new locker room, to have new infrastructure, to make it all work, where Oregon can. There's a discrepancy in what teams can do on the college side. I think we'd see that with the scholarships and how they handle their players returning for one more season.
You also hit on something significant. Do you think if you were a star Pac-12 or Big Ten player, would you be trying to explore a medical hardship right now to potentially go if the SEC and the Big 12 and the ACC are going to play? I know it's super short notice, but would you be trying to figure out if there's a way to get out of a Pac-12 or a Big Ten school to go elsewhere?
I think it depends on your draft status. So, for example, I'll use Penei Sewell again, Oregon's left tackle. He doesn't have to play to be the number one tackle off the board in the draft. No one's going to pass him. But if you're like a third-round pick, a fifth-round pick, yes. But I do not think that an SEC school, a Big 12 school, is going to want to do that at this moment, right? I mean, they probably already have a third-round pick at that position, fifth-round pick at that position. Why are they going to take you on?
What about recruits? What about if you were right now a recruit who had yet to get to campus in the Big 12 or the Pac-12? Wouldn't you at some point be like, man, I'm sorry, in the Big Ten or the Pac-12, wouldn't a part of you be like, why am I going to school now if I can't play football at all? Does it make sense to go somewhere else?
Yeah, but you have to get out of that scholarship,
right?
I mean, you've already signed you're already technically under scholarship with that team when you sign your letter of intent. So yes, I mean, players might feel that way, but I think that, in the short term, this is 1 year, right? So, if you're a recruit and you've recruited and you commit to Oregon and you've gone through the process and you love Oregon, you love Mario, you're just going to stay. This is a redshirt year. You're not going to play this year, but you have the chance to obviously play and live out your dream to play for the Ducks next season. If this was a multi-year thing, I think that, yes, people will look at that, but in 1 year, probably not. But look, there's guys at Oregon was the 11th best class last year. I'm sure there's players on that roster that people would love to poach.
Yeah, there's no doubt. Geoff Schwartz, appreciate the time, my man. We will talk to you next week.
All right, take care, bud.